Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Thursday night, and it is a blessing to be with you. If you want to join us on our late-night National Town Hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Right after we set up the show and talk with our guests, we're going to be taking your calls. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys. And there's a bunch of things going on in the news. I don't know where to start. I usually don't, right? I always have it planned out, and then last minute I change my mind because, you know, the news changes and it moves, and there's a lot going on. But I'm going to get into a few things tonight, right? I definitely want to talk about what happened with this guest of Chicago Congressman Chuy Garcia, who is the person that invited the father of the shooter, right? And when I say the shooter, I mean the guy that murdered two Israeli embassy staffers, very young people, one Jew, one a Christian, and did that in the name of his words, quote unquote, free Palestine. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're also going to talk about some of what's going on with the relaxed COVID vaccine guidelines. We talked about that when we heard the announcement from Secretary Kennedy, but I want to get into a little bit more of that. And, of course, a lot of political stuff, right? There's a lot of things. There's some breaking news, or at least it was breaking news a little while ago, of the tariffs, right? Yesterday, the big story, and I told you this wouldn't last long because it ultimately is fake, phony, and fraud. This is nothing more than critics of President Trump's saying that he is a racist, that he is orange man bad, that he's evil, he's this, he's that, he's all sorts of things, and his tariff strategy is illegal and unconstitutional. Well, a judge has weighed in and said, well, we haven't determined that just yet, and while we work this out, you get to keep collecting those tariffs. Listen to this.
A federal appeals court will temporarily allow the Trump administration to continue collecting tariffs. That decision comes just 24 hours after the U.S. Court of International Trade blocked the president's use of an emergency powers law as justification for the taxes on imports. That came after multiple states, including Oregon, sued the administration, arguing the president does not have the authority to bypass Congress and to impose tariffs. Legal experts say this will ultimately end up at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow. I think I said that, and I'm not a legal expert. I'm a talk show host. Anyway, this is, of course, what's going to happen there, right? And again, my prediction, and I'm not a psychic or a fortune teller or any of those things, Trump's going to win. He's going to win here because this is not anything new. We've seen them say that Trump is a tax evader, that he's this, he's that, you name it, right? And they like to go around saying he's a convicted felon. Yet, the crime that he committed, this so-called felony, in reality, wasn't even a crime until they made it a crime just to charge him with it. Remember that? I think we had, no shortage of lawyers on to explain exactly how they pulled that off. And no shortage of lawyers that said that this was a travesty of justice. And the majority of them weren't even fans of Trump's. They were just fans of telling the truth and fans of the law. Sometimes, when things are wrong, they're wrong. You gotta, like the old saying, you gotta call a spade a spade, and this is patently bad, if I can say so myself. Anyway, I want to talk about that. So we're going to talk about tariffs a little bit. I also want to talk about a little bit of what's happening in Israel right now, right? Because in Israel there has been some not just mourning, but there's been some acknowledgement of those that passed, and we're going to get to that in a second. I also want to talk about some of the things that are happening on the national security and political front. Big news today, the deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, who's been taking a little bit of heat, right? My buddy Dan taking a little bit of heat because he's telling the truth. When he didn't have all of the information in front of him, he said, this doesn't look good. This doesn't smell right. This doesn't look like a suicide. And he gets all of the information. He sees the video evidence. And voila, he says, look, this was a suicide. Now, if I didn't know Dan to be somebody of the utmost integrity and somebody who wouldn't just lie in your face, I would say, man, that's hard to believe. But because I think so many of us, many of you that listen to my show are on radio stations that carried his show. And the reality is, Dan's a good dude. He's a righteous guy. He's an honest guy. And now as deputy director of the FBI, I have no reason to believe that he's going to become a dishonest guy. And here's what he said on the Fox News channel earlier today.
I just want to be crystal clear on this. I am not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what's there and what isn't.
Right.
There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay, it was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this, we are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him.
Right.
There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
There you have it, Deputy Director Dan Bongino, FBI, saying they don't have it. There's no there. I don't have a reason to believe him. And I'm not saying that, like he said, I'm not asking you to believe him. I'm telling you that I believe him. Because I don't see why he would have a need to lie. Simple. Now, I know there's a lot of people out in conspiracy land that want to say a lot of things. Oh, that's because Epstein cut a deal and he's really alive and we've got to stick with the narrative that he's dead. Let's say that was true. Why even get close to this? Right? If there's a cover-up that needs to remain covered up, why on earth, with all the things that we have to worry about, why would we go out of our way to talk about this? And then to double down on it and to say, hey, we're going to give you the video. Why? Why not say, well, you don't like it too bad. Haven't we done that with a million things? We've done it with the JFK assassination. We've done it with, you name it. How many things are not under lock and key, under seal, under serious redactions that you can't understand what's going on? Plenty of things. So what was the need? There's no need to declassify. There's no need to do any of these things. So you have to ask yourself those questions. If they wanted to keep it hidden, they would keep it hidden. It's not that hard. You can classify things for, I think, 44 or 45 years at a time. Not that hard. Not that hard at all. Anyway, so that's the story on that, and we'll have some discussion on that. Listen, I was one of the first people to say this thing stinks to high heaven of a hit job made to look like a suicide. But I trust Cash. I trust Dan. And I trust their ability. And more than anything, I think we have to trust the evidence. Let us look at what's going on in Israel now. In Israel, there has been an acknowledgement and there has been a commemoration of the lives of these two young diplomat staffers that were murdered in cold blood in the name of Free Palestine by Elias Rodriguez, a radical activist, a pro-Hamas activist from Chicago, whose dad, by the way, consequently, was a guest of a Democrat congressman at President Trump's recent address to both Congress and the Senate. And just give this a listen.
Israel's foreign ministry held a memorial ceremony in Jerusalem for Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram, 2 Israeli embassy employees who were heinously killed in a shooting attack in Washington, D.C. last week. They had been attending a Jewish event at the Jewish Museum in D.C. The suspected killer was arrested after shooting the 2 young people, Sarah, 26 years old, and Yaron, 30. As the shooter was taken away, he shouted, "Free Palestine." He is known for being a far-left activist from Chicago. Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar led the tribute in Jerusalem, joined by U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee. Sa'ar thanked Noem for her solidarity and praised the U.S. government for its commitment to investigating the murders and fighting anti-Semitism.
So while they're commemorating their lives and looking back at what should never have happened, we're going to find out who is this Congressman Chuy Garcia? Why was his guest there in the first place? And is there more to the story than meets the eye? I don't know. But we're going to find out with the Democrat Alderman Raymond Lopez. He's going to join us. He represents the 15th Ward in the city of Chicago, and he's going to be joining us straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
All right, amigos, that again is the voice of Elias Rodriguez, a left-wing activist, a Democrat from Chicago that came all the way to Washington, D.C. just to murder 2 people that worked at the Israeli embassy in cold blood, shooting them, I think, 15 times is what the report was. And this is obviously a horrific thing that's occurred. This is not a political statement. This is not free speech. This is cold-blooded murder. But the web gets bigger, right? When this news broke a few nights back and we talked about this, people were calling in, and then there was more news that that this guy's dad was a guest of not of President Trump's, but of Congressman Chuy Garcia from Chicago at President Trump's joint session of Congress. And people want to know why and who. And then callers from Chicago, since we're on WLS, started calling in saying, well, this guy, Chuy Rodriguez, the congressman, his son is a known gang member. And I said, no, wait, that can't be. So we looked into it, and we found a little bit of information on that. So I want to get to the bottom line and get some reaction to this and so much more of what's going on with Alderman Raymond Lopez. He's a Democrat representing the 15th Ward in the city of Chicago. Alderman Lopez, welcome back, sir.
My pleasure, Rich. Good to be here with you and your listeners.
Thank you. Likewise. So, Alderman, we had a clip of audio. This clip of audio is old, and it's from our file vault. But I want you to listen to Congressman Chuy Garcia, discussing the allegation that his son is, in fact, part of a gang. Listen to this.
Your son has been arrested numerous times, and court records describe him as a gang member repeatedly. In 2013, he was charged with a felony for attacking an off-duty police officer. Is he still a gang member?
Phil, my wife and I live in a neighborhood. Its share of problems, including gang activity. My son grew up in that community. It's been challenging. We tried to be as loving and as caring and as supportive of my son as possible. He made some mistakes. I'm not proud of it. Perhaps all the love that we gave him wasn't enough. Gladly, my son learned from his mistakes. He has 4 children that he's raising. He is a chef, and he mentors kids in the community. He turned his life around. I'm proud of him.
Is he still in a gang?
No.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I don't actually think this is a fair line of questioning.
Actually, with
At the end there, I believe that's Mayor Rahm Emanuel, then Mayor, interjecting. Now, Alderman Lopez, I know you're a pretty straight shooter. You call it what it is from your perspective. And I don't know what's going on here other than some callers calling in and tell me what's going on. But what do you know about Chuy Garcia? Is this guy one of your buddies? This guy one of your nemesis? What is the story?
Chuy and I are on the polar opposites of the political spectrum. And let me just be clear. His son is still very much an active gang member. And we're talking about a guy in his 40s. So while Chuy may try to deflect, as usually the left-wing extremists do, and try to paint a different narrative, he was shooting at people in communities that I represent on the southwest side as recently as a few years ago. I think 2023 was the last time he was arrested for trying to shoot at people in a park, of all things, as a 40-plus-year-old man. You know, sadly, it is true. Sadly, Chuy has always been one to make excuses for gangbangers and criminals, and we know that, especially with what has gone on in Washington, this web of intersectionality, to use their favorite term, is growing. The groups that are tied with Hamas and have Hamas backing in the United States, like the Party for Socialist Liberation and things of that nature, those are operating in many of the wards and districts in the city of Chicago and in communities across this country that are usually represented by the extreme left of the Democratic Party, supported and their narratives allowed to be indoctrinating our youth through schools with the complicit help of the teachers' unions and things of that nature. And what I think, if there's any silver lining to the tragedy and the horror unleashed from last week, is that finally all of these lines of connection are being exposed, and just how far removed people are from some of the craziest and most dangerous elements of our society are finally coming to light.
Yeah, wow. Well, I appreciate your honesty. And again, for the record, and for those who are just joining us, we're on with Alderman Raymond Lopez. He's a Democrat who's described himself as a gay Democrat on this program. And he's just telling the truth about what he sees in his own community. And I agree with you on this point. I think that for years we've speculated that there's a left-wing movement and that they are pro-Hamas, they're pro-communist in many ways. And now we're seeing it, right? You can't argue. It's not me saying it anymore. This is a guy going from Chicago, and he's killing Jewish people because they're Jewish, and in the name of free Palestine. And the Palestinians aren't doing this necessarily, right? It's Hamas that's doing it. So it's not a leap to say that this is a pro-Hamas activist. And this is so concerning, because it's one thing to hear about on the news that it's happening in Gaza. It's another thing to think this is happening literally in your backyard and right outside of my D.C. studio. So I want to talk about that and get your take on this leftward movement in the Democrat Party and some of the other things that are going on in Chicago. So stick with me, Alderman Raymond Lopez. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions are coming up as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. I just wanted to share a quick breaking news here. I'm seeing reports that former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik is dead at the age of 69. My condolences to his family. He was a real hero during 9/11. And I want to continue our conversation as we get more information on that. I want to go back to what we were talking about with Alderman Raymond Lopez. There's a couple of things I want to discuss with you, Alderman. One is the trajectory of the Democrats. We were just talking about that, this how they've been exposing themselves for being so radical in their activism, left-wing activism. And one of the most vociferous activists on the left, in particular for gun control, has been David Hogg. And, of course, he was a survivor of the Parkland shooting some years ago. And he's now vice chair of the Democrat National Committee. Now, I don't think that he truly represents the rank and file of Democrats across the country, but he is the vice chair. And he was caught on a hot mic, hidden microphone, hidden video by James O'Keefe, undercover journalist, where he basically admits that Biden had no control over the White House and that it was really the chief of staff to the First Lady that was wielding all the power. It's not the easiest to hear, but give this a listen.
Foundational question for me is like, how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden? Well, the president of the United States.
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be like a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue was like the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it.
And I came straight to you and know.
Like Joe Biden's chief of staff. Like had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
So that is, again, David Hogg spilling the beans there. And Alderman Lopez, my question for you here is, do you think the fact that there was really no de facto leader in the president of the United States during Joe Biden's term, or a serious lack thereof, part of the reason that the party can't figure out what direction it wants to go in?
Well, I think there's a number of things clearly wrong with that scenario. And let me just issue my own 2 cents on the topic. You know, it's incredible how the Jake Tapers, the Hoggs, and all the rest of the political universe are now magically discovering a conscience where, there was a cover-up, we should have done more. And I
Right.
think that's in part because they know Kash Patel and Donald Trump are about to unleash all kinds of investigations on them to get to the heart of the matter, which should concern every American. When the president is no longer able to do his or her duties, there are mechanisms in place for the continuity of government. But what we've seen is like that movie you might remember in the 90s called Dave, where the president had a stroke and they brought in an impersonator to kind of look like him and somebody else ran the government.
Yeah.
That's played out over the last 4 years, apparently, and everyone knew it. Some speculated, but there's some seriously deranged individuals who thought they could hijack the government from the man who was elected to do it by refusing to acknowledge that he was no longer capable of executing his duties. That is criminal. That's treasonous. And I don't care what party the person is. It's got to be exposed. Don't let them off the hook for now coming about and saying, doing their little mea culpas. They knew what they were doing for 4 years, and if they could have done it for 4 more, they would have. Thankfully, that disastrous debate opened everyone's eyes to just what shape and what kind of elder abuse was going on in the White House. But, you know, there will be more to this, I'm certain. And I think the fact that the Democratic Party is listless and kind of just adrift stems from the fact that they haven't really created a bench. They don't have up-and-coming leaders to help move the party in a way that makes sense to modern voters. You have a senior home caucus in the House and Senate. You have leaders who are trying to tell voters what should be important to them, like trans issues or tampons in bathrooms, as opposed to listening to what's of concern to voters, like crime, like wages, like grocery bills, and all of that. And that disconnect has now flipped the script on a party that used to be the party of the working man, who's now the party of Oprah and Beyonce and all the elites. And the Republican Party, of all parties, is now the common man's party.
Filling the void.
Yep. Taking those that we've pushed to the side and welcoming them into the Republicans' arms, open arms, is exactly what the Democratic Party has done for the last 4 years. Now, I think the challenge for the Republicans will be not to overstep themselves and try to restrain themselves so that they don't push all of their newfound supporters back to the Democratic fold. because as the saying goes, if you see a train wreck, just step out of the way. But I think sometimes Republicans have a knack for trying to exceed their
Duplicate
grasp.
the train wreck.
Yes, and in turn duplicate it. Yes.
I hear you on that one. And let me ask you, Alderman, because I think what you're saying is accurate. I know a lot of Democrats, and they agree with you. You know, a lot of the issues that the hard left has doubled down on are not issues that were important to them. And many of them were part of the LGBTQ plus community. They weren't on board with the trans movement. This wasn't what was keeping them up at night. It wasn't why they were going to the voting booth. And here we are, from defund the police to girls, men and girls sports, and all of these other things. And we have, I think I'm going to say, a real vacuum when it comes to Democrat candidates. I think Elisa Slotkin might be positioning herself to be a more moderate. There's you and RFK Jr. that seem to be, you know, what we're going to call sane Democrats nowadays. But there aren't a lot of them. And the poll that came out, I don't know, a week or 10 days ago shows AOC at 26%, leading the way as the 2028 nominee. Now, I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think she goes on to be a senator and take out Schumer in New York. But the fact that that's who the poll is indicating is the top person, and Kamala Harris is way in the distance. What does that say to you?
Well, I think there's a recognizable and quantifiable disconnect with Democratic primary voters and Democratic general election voters. And oftentimes it's the most committed and most crazy that make for the Democratic primary. Trust me, I know. Whereas oftentimes those Democrats who vote in the general election are more likely to split tickets, more likely to look at the totality of issues, where the primary voters tend to have more litmus tests and purity tests. And, you know, we want a screaming lunatic to be on our side, so that's what we were going to go for. And then ultimately, if it's not a Democratic heavy district, don't understand why they lose every single time, because they're not picking middle of the road. And I think that that's something that states and the country need to look at is maybe, yes, it could remain a two-party, multi-party government, a political government, but maybe we twist and do a new take on the primaries so that you could have individuals run in primaries and do like we do in the city of Chicago, where we have nonpartisan primaries. You could be Democrat, you could be Republican, but whoever gets 50% of the vote plus one wins. This way you have a broader capability of having more mainstream moderate winners, as opposed to those that are usually to the extreme in either party making it to the general election.
Now, let me ask you another question, because I feel like that makes a lot of sense. What about...
Probably too much sense, but it's...
Yeah, right. Probably too much sense. But what about the people that, like you, that are out there and you say something and you say, you know what, I don't think this is right. And this is not good. And then they immediately try to turn on you saying that, you know, you're some sort of sellout, or you're this or that, or like the one woman, now let me see what her name is, the a colleague of yours that's trying to sue you or threatening to sue you over what you said. I think these things are crazy. What's going on with that?
You know what? We are seeing where individuals who have been used to spewing their hatred, spewing their narratives, spewing their indoctrination propaganda have never really been fully challenged by their colleagues or their party. And especially after what happened last week in Washington, you know, many of us are just enough. So now, you know, we are being more vocal in our effort to try to connect the dots, to show how groups that play along the fringe are now being given a level of legitimacy by their elected allies, and it's having a very real, visceral effect in our communities, leading to individuals to take up arms and murder people because they think that's how you promote the cause. And in exposing this kind of mentality, they have no other refrains other than to say you're a racist, you're a Zionist, you're for apartheid, you're for blah, blah, blah. And when none of that sticks, now we're going to take you to court. And I actually got not one but two cease and desist letters from individuals who didn't like the fact that we were highlighting the various groups that people associate with. But in the end, the truth will come out. And in the end, if this is what you've been espousing for years on the political scene to get elected and to gain power and to gain supporters, then all that's going to come home to roost, whether they like it or not. And no illegal maneuver can stop the truth from coming out.
Yeah, and that's likely why you tend to be pretty honest and forthright with how you stand and who you are, and you keep getting reelected. So I think it says something about the truth. People appreciate it.
Absolutely, they do.
Alderman, let everybody that's listening know how they can learn more about you, maybe support your campaign, and follow you on social media.
Well, I think the easiest and best way, follow me on X, Raymond A. Lopez. Every social is out there, but definitely X is where you do most of my truth-telling and damage to the extreme in the Democratic Party, and hopefully give it some life to all those who've been beaten by it.
Amen to that, brother. Well, Godspeed to you. I appreciate the conversation. Hope to chat with you again soon, and good luck if you get sued by Sanchez. Sorry to hear that.
I'll let you know when we have to start the GoFundMe for the socialist liberation over there.
Very good, sir. Thank you. And amigos, you bet. We're going to get to your calls, thoughts, and reactions on everything else that's going on in America at night, straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night, and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company all night long, or at least for the next couple of hours. And again, my condolences to the Carrick family. Report here from the New York Post that former police commissioner, New York City police commissioner, Bernard Carrick, was also a big national security figure as well in the Bush White House and an advisor to President Trump's campaigns. He and a supporter to President Trump's campaigns, because it's a sad thing, right? Sad thing when a patriot dies. And he was hospitalized with cardiac illness and died today. Bernard Carrick's career was, stellar, and then at one point it wasn't when they went after him, and he had to do some jail time for something that I think was, not even a, how do I put it in? I think it was a misunderstanding that became an oversight that became a crime. And it was just one of those things. It's very unfortunate. But what a hero during 9/11. What a hero in his service to the country overseas in Iraq. And again, my condolences to him. He was a colleague of mine briefly at WABC Radio. I think I was coming and he was going, typically, with the schedules of our shows. But a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, for sure. So that is Bernard Carrick. Rest in peace. Now, we continue, and we're going to go to the phones. Washington, D.C. Let's go to Mike, WMAL. Go right ahead, Mike.
Enjoying the show so far as usual. I was listening to what you talked about earlier about the Epstein tapes, and when Dan Bongino said that, that he really did hung himself, and you said that you believe it because Dan Bongino said so. As I was telling your screen caller, this government the system also has lied to the public so many times. about things that's happening that the public just don't believe anything that they say anymore. Even somebody that, had their own popular talk show like Dan Bongino, because once a lot of people, once you get into the government system, it's a different game. Because I've seen a lot of politicians talk about what they're going to do, and they talk really good. But once they get inside and find out how this game is really played, it's not what people think it is. So because this system has lied to the public so many times, public just not going to, and rightfully so, is not going to believe anything they tell them. And it's going to take time for them to regain that trust from the public again. And this system got itself to blame for that. Now, now, I don't worship any party, Democrats or Republicans. That's the reason, I'm an independent right now. You can't just tell me anything anymore. You have to prove things to me right now. And, and that's the reason why a lot of people pretty much becoming independents now, because they just don't trust the system anymore. And until the system fixes itself, the subliminal messaging that I hear from both sides, from conservative and progressive radio, is not going to work anymore like it used to.
I agree with you. And here's the thing, Mike. What I believe is happening here is the argument you're making is 100% valid. And it also holds true for the other side. And by the other side, I mean, oftentimes, the same way you said, people talk a good game until they get into office, right? You got politicians that run for office and they get to office and they don't keep the promises they made on the campaign trail. The same holds true for people in my business, right? The reality is and I'm not saying this about Dan or me, but I'm saying there are people in the media in general, not even conservative media. I'd say it's probably more prevalent on the left than anywhere. But there are people that are willing to say anything about anything so that people will listen to their program or watch their program on YouTube or something like that. And when in reality, it's not that exciting. And unpopular opinions don't always rate well, right? If you're looking for ratings, sometimes you've got to be a little over the top. You've got to be a little extra. I don't believe in doing that, only because A, it's not something that comes naturally for me, and B, I don't like it. I really don't. And that's why I probably lose listeners all the time when I say things like, and my friends in the conspiracy world, right? When I say these things and I make these comments and people get very upset that I don't believe people are going to be mass arrests and mass incarceration is going to occur, because I don't, right? Because I worked in government and I've seen what can happen and I know what should happen and what's probably going to happen. And I think the same holds true there. So I think the media sometimes paints pictures based on our purview, where we see things the way we see things, with a lot of incredulity. We see things and we're very skeptical. I can tell you for sure, when all of this Jeffrey Epstein stuff happened, I was one of the first people saying, this thing looks like a hit job. But I trust the professionals. Mike, I got to take a pause here, but excellent point, and thank you for the call. More calls straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you. And again, sad news of Bernie Kerik passing away. My condolences to him. I also wanted to say, look at Jake Tapper, right? Jake Tapper spent forever beating up on Lara Trump, saying, no way, Biden's the sharpest pencil in the box. And then guess what? Now he writes a book saying, did you know he wasn't that sharp after all? Right? This is some of that crazy that goes on in Washington in the media. All right, Catherine in Wilmington, you're up next. If you could stick around. Paul in Boise, hang on. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and our phone number, if you want to join us on our live and national late night conversation, give us a call. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Plenty going on tonight. Part of what I want to talk about tonight is, of course, the passing of New York City Police Commissioner, former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik. New York Post reporting that Bernard Kerik, dead at the age of 69. My condolences to his family, and of course, a big loss for the city of New York. Bernard Kerik, a hero during 9/11. He was the police commissioner working with America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, another American hero. May God rest his soul. Also, a federal appeals court temporarily reinstating Trump's tariffs because a international trade court, federal court, decided to say, you know what, we're going to side with Letitia James and her lawfare and go ahead and say that what Trump is doing with tariffs is illegal. Now, mind you, presidents have used tariffs in the past, including this particular president, but this time, all of a sudden, because the markets respond how they respond, this, of course, is illegal, right? That's the case now. But a court saying, no, not so fast. So good on them for that, for getting one of those things right? So oftentimes, I got to say, sometimes the courts don't get it right. We also have, President Trump giving Russian President Vladimir Putin a 2-week deadline to prove that he's serious about ending the war. I don't blame him. Listen, Putin, one of our callers said something last night. One of our guests, Navy SEAL guests that we had on last night, also had a good comment. And the reality is, the war is good for Russia. The war is also good for Ukraine, right? He gets to go around asking for more money. He gets to go around with the adulation and praise that comes with being a wartime president in Ukraine, standing up for his homeland. And I don't mean to be overly cynical here, right? I realize that both sides are losing men at record numbers. But the reality is this is a boon for their economies. And I don't think either of them want to see that end, sadly. And this is not unique to Russia and Ukraine. I think many in the establishment, in the permanent Washington, in the deep state, in the administrative state, as the great one says, the federal Leviathan, many in the swamp and the military-industrial complex also play the same game, right, where they never met a war they didn't love. And listen, I'm pretty hawkish on a lot of things, but I also understand the game, right? I understand the game of replacing regimes, knocking one down, putting in your own people, in the process of that, waging a war. And guess what? Now, to keep you guys safe, guess what we sell? We sell arms here. We've got Northrop Grumman, we've got Raytheon, we've got Boeing, we've got planes, we've got bombs, we've got guns. And I'm not against any of those things. I'm just saying that was, for a long time, the MO of the deep state within the United States. Many hawkish Republicans, many hawkish Democrats. But that's not the case anymore. There's a lot of people that aren't on board with that. And, okay, granted, I got you. I think we still need a strong national defense. I think we should never kind of part ways with being the people that are willing to be dangerous should we need to be. But needless to say, we don't want to get into wars, for no reason. And we don't want to stage them or set them up, false flag type of thing. So enters Trump into the political arena, where I think his approach to things is let's make a deal. And it's that let's make a deal approach, that mentality, that I think appeals to so many people, myself included, where I'm saying, look, we don't have to go to war. I agree with him. We don't have to. If we need to, we need to. But if we can do it another way, why not? So that's just, one of the headlines I'm looking at. There's a couple more. Let me see here. Media ratings, MSNBC and CNN are about as popular as the Black Plague. That's funny. Let me see what else we got here. Elon Musk is out at Doge because his time is up in that position. Let me see. Trump has other ways to impose tariffs despite what the U.S. court ruling says. And there's plenty more. And, of course, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino and Kash Patel sharing that the video of the entrance and exit of Jeffrey Epstein's cell, which shows that he was alone at the time that he was killed by himself, allegedly, it shows just that no one entered and that he was, in fact, alone. They also had some things to say about James Comey. So we're going to get into some of that as well in a little bit. I also want to talk about, let me see, I'm kind of all over the place. I need a little Adderall tonight, and I don't take Adderall. Those of you who've listened long enough know that I'm anti-Adderall over here. But I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with health policy, right? I feel like we don't spend enough time talking about that. And I know this is very near and dear to a lot of moms, a lot of dads. Whenever I go somewhere and we get into a conversation, it almost always ends up with, well, they're poisoning our food. I mean, if we didn't put so many carcinogenic, materials in our food or allow them, or things that are allowed in the United States that aren't allowed anywhere else, we'd be doing a lot better. And listen, I don't begrudge anybody who's saying that. I think you're right. And I think it's about time that we've done that. There's a guy I follow. I invited him on the show. He did not accept my invitation. But his name is Dr. Daniel Amen, spelled Amen. He's a brain doctor. I don't know what kind. I guess he's a neurologist or a psychiatrist, one or the other. But he's got some pretty interesting social media content. But I saw a clip of him the other day, and he was talking about his reaction to being present at the MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again Commission meeting, where RFK Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, gave his report to President Trump, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. And those findings and saying, look, we are taking on Big Pharma. We are going to do it. And I love that they're willing to take on Big Pharma, because Big Pharma's had some very deep pockets. And they've with the deep pockets, they're able to buy themselves the favor of a number of people in Washington, from Congress into the administrative state. So I think it's a good thing to have these discussions, and I want to have some discussion on that with a professor of health policy, because I think it's important that we have these discussions, as well as, and by the way, this person was a former Deputy Ash, Assistant Secretary of Health, which is a very big position in the Department of Homeland Security. So we're going to talk about the latest COVID vaccine guidelines, the latest with the MAHA Commission, and so much more, because, again, this is very new for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people that meant well for a very long time are very surprised by what's going on. And some of them might even take exception to what's going on. But I think by and large, the people are very satisfied. And I guess we're going to find out, do the professionals agree with we the people? We're going to find out more on that straight ahead. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. Thank you, somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit is granting the administration's request for an emergency stay. Essentially, what this means is that at least temporarily, all tariffs can remain in place in spite of that ruling just last night. Now, the counsel for the plaintiffs already out with a statement saying they believe this is merely a procedural step and that ultimately they are confident that the Federal Circuit will deny the government's motion and allow the ruling to move forward, which would mean the tariffs, at least many of them, would have to be lifted in the meantime. Now, this is all temporary. The plaintiffs have until June 5th, 1 week from today, to respond. Then the court will ultimately decide again on that longer term stay. The White House, this is a win for them, but they're also sort of seeming unbowed here, knowing that they have some other options if this one doesn't prove successful for them. Take a listen here to White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro.
The court told us, they didn't all but tell us, they told us, go do it another way. So you can assume that even if we lose, we will do it another way.
So looking for other options that they know are out there if they need to find them.
So that's the latest. Again, they tried to stop El Trompito from issuing tariffs. Again, Letitia James, his arch nemesis from New York, the Attorney General, who ran on the platform, I will get Trump. She tried to get him yet again and got some of her judge friends in the Federal Trade Court to go against him, the president, and of course the country in many ways, and side with Attorney General's logic there in New York. And quickly an appellate court saying not so fast. So that's what's going on right there. But we're going to talk about these judges because, again, the judges are quick to do a lot of things. And I really want to spend some time on that. But I'd be remiss if I did not say again, Count? Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't give this topic with the tariffs the time that it deserves. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. Plus your calls. I see we have calls from Arizona, Wilmington, North Carolina, Idaho, and more coming in. But we have another call from the former Deputy Ash, right? This is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Health in the Department of Health and Human Services, David Mansdoerfer. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Outstanding. Now, there's a clip of audio I played for my audience a couple of nights ago, and it was about, the vaccine guidelines. And again, I think that was a blip on the radar for some people. But for many, I feel like it's a larger step forward. And even RFK Jr. kind of alluding to so much of these health reforms being something that he's been waiting a lifetime to do. I want you to listen to this clip of him.
I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children. This is a milestone. There's never in American history has the federal government taken a position on public health like this. And because of President Trump's leadership, it's not just one cabinet secretary, it's the entire government that is behind this report. And I can say again, I talked a little bit about when I met Rachel Carson as a boy. My uncle tried to do this, but he was killed and it never got done. And ever since then, we've been waiting for a president who would stand up and speak on behalf of healthy American people and say, there is no difference between good economic policy, good environmental policy, and good public health policy, and good industrial policy. We can have all of them, but we need a united cabinet, and we need to go forward as a single people. I want to thank you for that, President Trump.
Now, of course, Professor Mansdoerfer, you've got the secretary there speaking about both what the latest news on the COVID vaccine was and coupled with the overall MAHA, Make America Healthy Again Commission report that he's hailing as monumental. And I think a lot of people agree. Given your time in Washington and your renown in this field, what are your thoughts?
I'm really excited that we have a president and an HHS secretary from the pharmaceutical industry and just the public health industry that has just lived off its own laurels and just had so many of these draconian mandates that had little evidence behind what they were actually intending to do, that, I'm so pleased that we have a president and a secretary that are willing to stand up for the American people.
Now, Professor David Mansdoerfer, what are your thoughts on how the big pharma folks are going to react vis-a-vis their lobby and everything else that they've got at their disposal?
The pharmaceutical lobby is probably the most impactful lobby in Washington, D.C., but it even goes beyond that. The direct-to-consumer marketing that pharmaceutical industries have and do with their various drugs actually funds a good portion of media as well, too. And so it is so intertwined with how we get information here in the United States and the influence that pharma has, that to have a president and to have a secretary that's willing to stand up against that is just, it's so impressive.
I tend to agree with you there. And I think a lot of people are almost, kind of baffled, kind of dumbfounded, saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe these guys are actually taking on big pharma. Whereas I think those are more the Washington types. I think then you've got, bystanders, people that, lost a family member to cancer or, are fighting it themselves and fighting obesity, diabetes, something like that, type 2. And they look at it and they go, wow, it's about time. I can't believe we've gotten this far away from actually assisting the public, guiding the public, protecting the public when it comes to our public health. Your thoughts?
Yeah. We have an American first president, and when we see that Europe and other parts of the world are actually leading on taking out some of these harmful byproducts in our food, in our water, in our, various things that we, have and consume as in the United States. I mean, yesterday they talked about taking, the Mars company, which owns Skittles, took out an ingredient within the Skittle that was absolutely not necessary, but has been shown to be harmful. And what's even more concerning is that the FDA has generally allowed it, even when other countries had required it to be out of their food. So how do you have an American first president when and an American first secretary, leading the way, when you see other parts of the world are actually leading the way on many of these, good common sense health reforms, and now we have a president and a secretary who are willing to just do common sense measures to make sure that the American people are good.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. David Mansdoerfer, hang on with me. We're going to come back, and I want to get your thoughts on a number of things. There's a number of new regulations, new guidance on a couple of topics I want to get your thoughts on, ranging from gender-affirming care to vaccines to so many other things. So stick with me, folks. We're coming right back. Rich Valdez and the former Deputy Ash.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
More than 40% of American children now have at least one chronic health condition. Since the 1970s, rates of childhood cancer have soared in many cases by nearly 50%, 50%. Well, In the 1960s, less than 5% of the children were obese. Now over 20% are obese. A few decades ago, think of this one. This is, to me, the one that gets me every time, and it seems to be getting worse. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today, it's 1 in 31. Last time I heard the number is 1 in 34, right? Now it's 1 in 31. There's something wrong, and we will not stop until we defeat the chronic disease epidemic in America. We're going to get it done.
America, we're going to get it done. That, of course, is the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, the 45th and 47th President of these United States, and making his announcement just about a week ago regarding the MAHA, the MAHA Commission report, Making America Healthy Again. And I want to get some reaction to that and those figures and some of the actions being taken by Secretary Kennedy from someone who understands this better than I do. David Mansdoerfer is adjunct professor of health policy and politics at Pepperdine School of Public Policy, and he's a former Health and Human Services Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health. The Deputy Ash is with us. David Mansdoerfer, thanks for sticking around. And I want to get your reaction to President Trump's comments.
There is so many good things within that report that talk about quality evidence-based public health. And that goes back to quality food, making sure that the environment around us is a good environment, especially for kids to grow up in. And it talks about all of the medical interventions that we have been progressing on these children that haven't shown to have good positive health outcomes. And so to me, dealing with kids first from a public health perspective is the absolute right way to do it, because there's so many things that if we could help these kids learn to live their best lives, it's going to have so many good outcomes for us, everything from education, from health outcomes to, less chronic diseases in the future. So to me, this report does an excellent job addressing upstream chronic disease issues that will really make an impact in the years to come.
And I want to get your reaction on something else. CNN reporting that HHS has sent a letter telling healthcare providers to disregard treatment protocols for trans people and to adhere to the latest MAHA report. This is, again, I think, consistent with the messaging that was issued in the campaign. There are a number of organizations like America's Frontline Doctors and the Do No Harm organization that contend that this, what is known as gender-affirming care, is, in their opinion, very detrimental to young men and women that are experiencing gender dysphoria. Do you think that this is going to be met with open arms, with a lot of pushback, and how much pushback, if any?
Well, what folks don't talk about enough is that the gender-affirming care and the medical industrial complex around the entire, transgender movement is extremely lucrative. I mean, you think about all of the unnecessary medical procedures that are being performed on these kids predominantly, that, everything from surgeries to different types of interventions when it comes to, drugs and hormone therapy treatments. So to me, this is going to be welcomed with open arms by folks with common sense. It's not going to be welcomed with open arms by a medical industry that has profited greatly of these poor kids and an ideology that has pushed them to make life-altering choices at the guidance of these professionals that should have known way better than how they've been treating them.
And that's a really good point, and a pretty commonsensical one, right? I mean, I go to the doctor, And I go to the doctor, and the guy, he looks at my gut and, smack it a couple of times if it's too big. And he'll say, hey, you need to lose a little weight, putting on a few pounds there, huh? Asking me what I'm eating, how I'm eating. He's going to look at blood test results, tell me to eat less carbs, to stay away from type 2, look at my A1C number, all these things. And because he knows that a high-carb diet and certain things lead to certain health ailments that'll ruin my cardiovascular disease, et cetera, et cetera. So there's certain things we know we can avoid that would cause things just like this. But yet there are, like you said, there's a medical industrial complex that's happy to create Lipitor and cholesterol drugs and the GLP-1 antagonist drugs and all of the other diabetes drugs. And it's in their best interest for you to be sick.
It absolutely is. And when we talk about, gender-affirming care, many of these treatments have lifelong implications. And so it's really interesting to me to see a trusted, who should be a trusted resource for these kids and families as they deal with some of these issues, leading them down what financially benefits them as opposed to what is a beneficial outcome for the kid. It is truly extremely disheartening. And honestly, these medical professionals should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on the same front, we've got HHS canceling nearly $600 million in contract with Moderna for vaccines for flu pandemics, questioning the under-tested mRNA technology. Your thoughts on that?
I think there was a report that came out through Rasmussen today that said 51% of folks in the United States now think that there are cardiovascular issues in relationship to the Moderna COVID vaccine. And I think that's a profound failure of the public health industry, one, for pushing something that is untested and unproven, and two, not doing a good enough job to show folks all of the impacts of taking that particular type of vaccine, the mRNA. And so to me, Secretary Kennedy is just restoring the gold standard of evidence when it comes to things that HHS approves and invests in. I am very, very excited that, again, standing up to the pharmaceutical industry, Secretary Kennedy and his team are making the right choices for the American public.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I just look at this and I say, one of the guys who helped create that mRNA, Dr. Robert Malone, he's testified before Congress. I've had him on this show a number of times. And he's the first one to say, I didn't create this for that. It wasn't a delivery system for that. It was a delivery system for gene therapy. This is not what we need, and we definitely shouldn't be using it with young, healthy people. And I thought, if the guy who's, in large part responsible for this being created says we shouldn't be using it, why are we using it?
It comes down to it was an opportunity to use the public health apparatus to control lives. I really fundamentally believe that. And to me, when you only have, I think the number was 6% uptake in children for the booster shots, and a dwindling number over time, shows that the public faith in the technology as a whole has cratered. And honestly, I don't know if there are benefits to the technology moving forward in other avenues, but it actually makes sense to me to actually bring it back to scratch and do the evidence-based trials, because if the technology has any chance of doing anything else, I don't see how that's possible in an era, in an environment where so few people have faith in the technology.
Really good point. Now, I want you to give everybody the opportunity to, follow you and learn more about you. Where do they go?
Well, I'm most active on X, so I would love to engage there. but I also have a weekly column in the Epoch Times as well, talking about updates in Washington, D.C. So either area I'd love your listeners to tune into.
Outstanding. Folks, check him out. David Mansdoerfer, adjunct professor of health policy and politics at Pepperdine School of Public Policy and former Health and Human Services Department Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health. David Mansdoerfer, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate your candor and your expertise.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Godspeed to you, sir. And amigos, your calls, thoughts, reactions, all coming up right now. Ohio, Illinois, Florida, Kansas, North Carolina, Arizona, Idaho. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
But Trump does always win these negotiations because we're right. We're right that America has been mishandled by other governments, that our tariffs are taking them to the table, and they're coming in with massive concessions, opening up their markets to our products and lowering their tariffs on us. And so this trade negotiation season has been really, really effective for the American people. And it's unfortunate that people would attack it as the journalists did or the way the judges just did. You know, these activist judges are trying to slow down something right in the middle of really important negotiations. And the idea that the fentanyl crisis in America is not an emergency is so appalling to me that I'm sure that when we appeal, that this decision will be overturned.
That is the director of the National Economic Council in the White House, Kevin Hassert. And I tend to think he's making a lot of sense here, right? Activist judges and those in the media that don't like Trump's policies are slowing down a lot of progress that's being made while they're saying he ain't doing nothing. The big homie ain't doing nothing, but he's doing a lot. So let's get your reactions on this. I want to go to Morris, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Morris, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Yeah, I wanted to talk about these activist judges, but a quick question for you. My brother's serving time for extortion. I hear Trump is trying to make white-collar crime great again.
Where'd you hear that? Did you make that up? Or did Biden tell you something like that?
How do I go about purchasing a pardon? Do you know what it's
Well, I'm asking you a question. Where did you hear about this white-collar crime being made great again?
Oh, you just have to watch Trump every day. It's so obvious.
Well, I mean, what I see are people that were overcharged, people that were wrongly charged, people that have served, I don't know, let's see, Alice Johnson, right, who's the head of the pardon office. She served, it's a black woman that served 23 years out of a 50-year sentence on a drug charge, and she never had any drugs on her. But she was in the vicinity of where this thing went down, and she took the fall with the rest of the people in the charge. They have made an appeal to Trump, and he said, wow, that's crazy. This lady's already done 23 years, and we're still going to keep her in jail when she had nothing to do with the actual deal. And to me, that sounds like compassion. That sounds like somebody being fair. So maybe they should talk to Alice Johnson instead of being a wise ass and talking about buying pardons. That's very clever, very, very intelligent. Folks, that's Morris in Chicago. His amazing retort is a chuckle. Thank you, Morris. You proved who you really are. Let us continue. Let us go. Where do we go now? We're going to go to Catherine, Wilmington, North Carolina, WAAV. Go right ahead, Catherine.
I almost forgot why I called about Bernard Kerik passing away.
Yes, the commissioner. What a shame that's been.
Yeah. Very sad to see that because 9/11, is just yikes.
Yeah,
And,
listen, I mean, he was on the front lines of everything that was going on in the city right there, like a Batman and Robin with Rudy Giuliani. And, I remember I went to a breakfast here in the Northeast in Bergen County, New Jersey, right across the river in New Jersey. And I believe it was at a place called Fiesta, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. But Bernard Kerik was there, and he was giving a talk. It was the morning of 9/11, a couple of years back. And it was this just chilling story about how he had, guided Mayor Giuliani through like some stores, and they had back doors that were going to like a staircase right when one of the towers fell, and it kind of pinned them in, and they were able to get out eventually. But it was them and like 6 or 7 police officers that were with them, and that was it. And it was quite the story to hear, how these guys navigated the complete darkness. And if you've ever seen those videos, everything went dark in the middle of the day, right in the middle of the morning. It was late morning because of all the black smoke that just filled the streets of Lower Manhattan. It was totally surreal, honestly was. But Catherine, thank you for your condolences and your well wishes to the family. I appreciate that, and for your call as well. Let us go to Billy. Eskridge, Kansas, KMAJ. Billy, go for it. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey there, Rich. Hey, just want to thank you again for your show and congratulate you on your success.
Thank you.
But out of respect for your time, I'll get to the point. In regard to the Epstein case, and again, likewise, I respect Bongino and Patel and their opinions and everything. But my point of my call is, the facility knew his state of mind. I've known people that were in jail and on suicide watch, but the facility was still responsible for making sure that he remained alive, so that he could spill the beans, or that he and other evil people could face justice, or some kind of justice.
Yeah.
So just your thoughts on that as far as, I'm not just going to let this go and say it's over, right?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you this. There's something in jail called protective custody, PC, right? On the street, they call it Punk City. But protective custody is designed for people that are likely going to get shanked by somebody in the jail because of what went down, whatever it was, right? And if there was a fight, there was retaliation, that type of thing. There are a lot of people that are in protective custody, so that they don't get stabbed, that end up getting stabbed. There's a lot of people that are moved from one wing or one tier of a jail to another wing or another tier of a jail, switching roommates, all sorts of things, so that they don't get harmed in prison. There are people that are in prison for committing crimes, yet they're running crime syndicates inside of the jail. And there are people that are in jail that end up dead for lots of reasons, whether it's in suicide watch or otherwise. So I can tell you that there's a whole economy in the prison that you and I likely don't understand. And a lot of things happen in jail, a lot of ugly things. So I don't know what to think of it, but it's not outside of the realm of reason that a guy that was meant to be kept alive was in a place that they don't take care of, where they don't have good cameras, and where the guard was asleep. It seems possible, although it seems like a fairy tale at the same time, if that makes any sense. Billy, Eskridge, Kansas, thanks for your kind words. I appreciate the compliment. KMAJ in the building. I'm pausing right here, coming right back. Keep it locked.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company. 833-482-5337 is the number, 833-4-VALDEZ. Very little time on the clock, so I'm going to ask you guys to hang on if you can. But we've got John in Ohio. I want to come and talk to you a little bit. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida. I want to come and talk to you a little bit as well. We got Paul in Arizona, Ron in Alabama. Somebody named Frank. I don't know where you're from yet, but we're going to get to you. Robert, hang in there, buddy. We're coming your way. Rich Valdez. Be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. This is that coveted hour that not everybody gets across America. So actually, you're all getting it, but most of you are getting it. I'm hoping that a couple of stations that don't have it are going to pick it up. But anyway, welcome. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. It's Rich Valdez. I'm live with you tonight, like I am every night, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. We've been having some great national conversation this evening. And the phone number is 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, the Trump tariffs yesterday, as the international court enjoined the administration from pursuing any tariffs. Today, another court says, all right, not so fast. Take it easy. Hold on a second. Right, which I believe will likely be what the rest of the courts say, including the Supreme Court, should it get that high. And it likely will, and it should. This way we can put this thing to bed. But that's exactly what happened today, and Trump's tariffs back in effect. The lawfare failed. The activist judges have failed. The radicals within our government, the radicals within our media that are trying to sabotage Trump at every step of the way, right? This is not, I mean, I guess they can justify it to them, to their friends, to their neighbors, saying things like, look, I can't stand here and just watch our country go to, wherever. I got to do something. And this is exactly what suicide bombers say, right? They're like, I can't just sit here and let these people do it. I got to do something, right? There is no standard that they adhere to. They do whatever they think they have to do whatever they think is right. Forget about a standard set of rules. Imagine if we all lived that way, right? Imagine guy cuts you off, flips you the bird, and go, I couldn't let this guy keep going. He's flipping me the bird. He's cutting people off. I had to run him off the road. I mean, just imagine if people thought like that willy-nilly, right? But people don't want to have that conversation. They just want to try and justify their bad behavior. That's fine. I'm here to call you out on it. And along with 6 million of my closest amigos. But speaking of that, I got a note on Messenger, on Facebook Messenger, from one of our listeners. Very upset with me. Very, very upset. Let me see if I can find it. He was very upset, and he said to me, this is America. You are broadcasting in America, and you need to broadcast in English. And I said, oh, my goodness. It's one of those guys. So he went on to tell me that enough of this amigos BS. You live in America, broadcast in America, where our national language is all caps, English. Enough with the amigos BS. And I tried to be as polite as I could be. And I said, hey, Brett. His name is Brett Wade, by the way. I said, thanks for your message. I'm in the studio. No, wrong. That's an automated message that automatically gets sent out. I said, Brett, there are so many options that you could listen to at night. Why do you listen to me? I appreciate your listenership, but if you don't like what I'm saying, just find another show and stop whining like a lib. You sound like a transgender person begging to be called by your preferred gender, forcing others to acknowledge your particular pronouns. Not going to happen. That's not liberty, mi amigo. Had to throw that in there to piss him off a little bit. I said, I'm not going to change who I am to accommodate your delicate sense of self, which seems easily offended or threatened by my Hispanic heritage. Toughen up, Buttercup. He writes back, I gave you a chance because I'm a Mark Levin fan. And I know that you used to screen his calls. That's why. I'm not a tranny or a lib or a whiny listener. But thanks for asking. I'm a patriotic, red-blooded American who lives in a country that's official language is English. I'm not that official, sir. I'm irreverent. I'm here to break the rules. Anyway, and he says, is it too much to ask for an American broadcaster to speak the official language? I don't live in a Hispanic country. please do better. Well, sir, you may not live in a Hispanic country, but you live in a country where nearly 70% of Hispanics elected the same president you did. And they did so with the idea that we put America first, that we put liberty at the forefront of what we do. And this is why for years, maybe you're new to the dance here, but I'm not. And for years when people would scream, "It's America, speak English," I've always said, "It's America, speak whatever you want." Because there is an economy in this world, in this life, right? And it's a real economy. If you come to America and you choose not to learn to speak English, you likely will not benefit like someone who does speak English. Now, I happen to speak English. It is my first language. I learned Spanish after I learned how to speak English. I don't think I speak a lot of Spanish here. I think I give you little tidbits every now and again of, things my dad would say, things my mom would say, maybe a couple of murmurings that I might call. I'll call you, right? I would say, I get listeners like Brett Wade, "What a pendejo," right? I say things like that. But outside of all those things, I think we conduct this show in English, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find, a majority of people that think that I'm doing the show in Spanish. They wouldn't listen because they probably don't speak Spanish. So, Brett, I think you've got your panties in a bunch. I recommend, A, stop wearing panties and maybe go with boxers or briefs. And B, lighten up, brother. Lighten up. It's not that serious. It really isn't. If you're that concerned, have some more kids, right? Do what everybody else that loves their heritage does. Have a big family. Celebrate your family. And that's it. And keep it moving. I mean, life is ultimately about doing what you feel is right, but not doing what you feel is right at the detriment of others. So don't be a suicide bomber. Don't be a tranny, and don't be a whiny liberal. But I hope you keep listening to this show. Anyway, I would normally save that to the end, but I knew I'd forget if I didn't. And I wanted to do that because I bet you he's listening. You know why? Because people that disagree with me love to listen to this show. The truth is, half of the audience disagrees. That's why you hear a lot of the regular callers, right? Those are the guys that typically agree or a couple that disagree. Well, we got a couple, our buddy Jerome. Jerome calls from South Carolina. He never agrees with me. Never. Like, I don't think ever once he's agreed with me, right? We get a lot of those. The homie David in San Francisco, he never agrees with me. Even John from Brunswick, Ohio, WNIR, he doesn't agree with me. But let's check in with John and see what he has to say. John, what's on your mind?
Hi. Sometimes I agree with you. Sometimes I don't.
That's fair.
The point I want to make, I've been making this point for 20 years with zero regard for political bias. I started when the movie was produced in the early 2000s, depicting a politician who looked a whole lot like George Bush dying in that movie. I called the producers for that movie out on the air. Now, there have been a number of political figures on both sides of the political spectrum and both sides of the Trump and Trump opposition spectrum calling sometimes quite explicitly for political violence. I can give you several examples, including a couple on the left.
No, we're taking too long here. You got to make your point and quick.
Okay, including your own radio affiliates in my listening area who called for Trump's political and legal opponents to be killed. Can I give those examples?
I don't want you to give examples I can't corroborate. I want you to make a point.
I'm online right now.
But you're not making a point.
Yes, I am. It's happening on both sides, and I can give you two examples from your own radio affiliates in my listening area.
Okay, so what does that do? Make me guilty by association? I mean, what's the point you're trying to get to here?
Hypocrisy. Call it out with zero
There's
regard.
stupid people on both sides. I don't live where you live. I don't live in Brunswick, Ohio. I don't even listen to the radio. So I have no idea what you're talking about. This is the point that I'm making. I don't hear anybody calling for anybody to be killed. Now, if you're talking about the James Comey 86 thing, and I understand that you think that it's a stretch to say that 86 means to kill or assassinate, if that's the real bottom line of your point, to that I will say this. I will say that it is in my neck of the woods, right? I grew up in Brooklyn, a couple of neighborhoods away from the famous mob boss John Gotti. And back then, it was a thing. To 86 someone meant to drive them 8 miles out and bury them 6 feet deep. 8 and 6. That's what that meant. Now, others may mean cancel the salad order, but it's not a far stretch for those that understand that world.
The primary mainstream definition is cancel or reject.
All right. So if I cancel or reject your life, I guess you don't get to live, right?
Both sides, much more explicit.
All right, John, let me explain something to you. I signed up to be a conservative talk radio host. I'm not here to be the arbiter of truth. I'm not a Supreme Court justice. I'm not here to do any. I have my own political biases. I bring them to the table every day. The reason I have a show is because I am here to tell you how I see things, right? I'm not a reporter. I am a commentator. I give you conservative commentary from a Puerto Rican kid from Brooklyn that lives in Jersey now. And I tell you how I see things. So that's what I do. You call and you give me your opinion. All right, your opinion doesn't match mine. But I can't sit here and have you tell me that I have to call out this one and I have to call out that one and I have to do this and I have to do that. I don't care about all those things, right? Yet nobody should be calling for anybody to be killed. Period. The end. Punto y final. That's in Spanish for our friend Mr. Wade. But bottom line here is I haven't heard anybody in MAGA world say that we should be killing anybody. Now, if you have, that's on you. Put it on your show, but don't put it on mine.
On the air by one of your affiliates in my listening area.
What do I care about an affiliate of mine? What do I care about what I didn't say it. If I say, hey, John, you're a white guy. I heard a white guy say something stupid the other day. You must be stupid like that other white guy. I mean, how do you make this guilt by association make sense in your mind?
All of this is to censor me because two of the examples are on your
sir,
side.
You're not being censored because you had an invitation to make a point, and you're not making a point. What you're doing is trying to grandstand. You're trying to filibuster. You're trying to make this into your show, and you're not even making a good point.
Why don't you just say it instead of pretending with all this BS?
Why don't I say what?
Let me give the examples, including two on your side.
No, I just told you. I don't care about your examples. I can't corroborate them. I didn't hear them. If you had audio and said, hey, look, did you hear about this audio? It's on YouTube under blah, blah, blah. We could check it out. Come back in a half hour when we're talking about this a little bit later and say, right here. And I play it for everybody to hear and say, this is the example John from Brunswick, Ohio is talking about. What do you guys think? Give me a call, 833-4-VALDEZ. But I can't do that because I don't have that information. So it puts all of us at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, you're here, hot under the collar, blowing a gasket, panties in a bunch. Relax, brother.
Panties in a bunch. It's calling on hypocrisy and double standards.
Well, then call it out. Do you feel better now? How do you think you're doing an arm wrestle with me?
The examples given because two of them are on your side.
How do you think you're doing in a charity boxing match with me, John?
I've been kickboxing for 20 years.
Oh, now you're cursed. You see, I got under your skin. So that means you get dumped. America probably won't even hear what you had to say because we're on a delay. But this is a classic example. He's very, very upset because he doesn't think that they were saying bad things about killing Trump and that I'm supposed to call out the hypocrisy on both sides. Well, John, I'm going to call you out for being a pendejo. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We're going to continue with your thoughts, calls, and reactions in a moment. But I just wanted to make a point, right, regarding the last caller. He used a tactic that's very, very, very often used by the left, which is trying to make it look like they're making a point while promoting propaganda, right? Trying to have a conversation about apples, but introducing oranges. And this is not only disingenuous, but it's not even a legitimate form of debate, right? No typical debate would allow that. Bottom line, this is what the left does. They try to show you what's going on the left when you don't see what's happening on the right. And I'm talking about the left hand and the right hand. So I want to talk about politics from that perspective because there's a lot going on. And Politico put an article out the other day, 21 unexpected heavy hitters for a Democrat shadow cabinet. And, I mean, there's people, all sorts of people, Letitia James, Jon Stewart, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Who else? Mark Cuban. By the way, I went to the bathroom at the old Trump Hotel, which is now called the Waldorf in D.C., like a week or 3 ago. And right next to me at the urinal, just finishing as I was getting there. We weren't next to each other for, any extended period of time. Mark Cuban. And, he gave me like a little nod, I guess, to be polite. I was like, hey, yeah. It took me a minute to realize who he was. I was thinking, he looks familiar. Oh, yeah, Shank Tank. And he was at the Waldorf in D.C. I guess he was lobbying President Trump for something. But he's on this list. And there's several other people here. Linda Sarsour, remember her? Oh, yeah, she's on there. And that looks like Ben Stein. Bueller. Anyway, I want to get some reaction on this stuff because I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. I think the Democrats have a real leadership vacuum going on, whereas Republicans, in my opinion, they've got a lot of people. You got Marco Rubio, that's a solid contender for president. You've got J.D. Vance, who's an obvious contender for president as vice president. You've got Governor Ron DeSantis, popular, successful two-term governor of a big state, who's another obvious contender for president in 2028. And then you keep hearing about AOC and Jasmine Crockett. Now, pretty women for sure, but is that enough, right? Is that and a good soundbite and a big social media following enough? I don't know. So I want to bring in the big guns here. Somebody we've had on the show before. I enjoy her commentary. Raven Harrison, who happens to be running for Congress in Florida, by the way. Welcome back.
Hi, Rich. Good evening.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's always interesting, isn't it? Got a lot of work to do.
I bet you do. We're going to get into that in the next segment, a little bit about your campaign for Congress. But right now, I want to get your thoughts on this Democrat shadow cabinet and some of the other goings-on in Washington. What do you think of this shadow cabinet trying to, I guess, pull strings and guide and direct and all the stuff that they think that they're doing, which I think they're not doing?
Well, I think that it shows desperation. This is basically the Democrats trying to find a different way to get a bite of the apple. And what we saw in their campaign was it basically imploded. Kamala had everything at her advantage. She had every three-letter agency, the government, and just like Hillary, they couldn't throw her across the finish line. Now they're scrambling to where we have, Bernie Sanders and AOC.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to remember.
Yeah, it's the Stop Oligarchy Express. Raven Harrison, stand by. We're going to come right back to you. Amigos, we will return momentarily. Of course, your thoughts, calls, reactions are coming up. 833-4-VALDEZ. Some additional conversation with Raven Harrison and a little bit more from me. I think there's a few more people that want to fight with me out there. So we're going to do it straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue with Raven Harrison. And Raven, I want you to hear this clip of audio. It's from MSNBC. Ari Melber was interviewing the Ragin' Cajun, right? The former Clinton advisor, former White House advisor, James Carville, big Democrat strategist. And he was reacting to a poll that was put out that showed AOC in the lead by 20-something%, I think 26%. This is about 8 or 9 days ago. And it was remarkable because Kamala Harris was at 6% in that same poll. She was beating her by 20 points. And I thought to myself, if this is really where the rank and file, the Democrat primary voters are, We're doing great on our side. Listen to this.
If you don't see Chuck Schumer and Jeffries on there, and you don't see some of the other big names like Harris, it does suggest some confusion in the general public about who's really leading the party right now, no?
There's no leader of the party. Okay, and the party doesn't have a message. Let's get over that right now. That we can fight back. We've got a lot of fighting back to do on the legislation is coming. We got our elections coming up. But the way that the party has a leader is a presidential nominee. We're not going to have one until 2028. But boy, have we got some talent out there. And I don't have a very favorable opinion of the Democratic Party, and I have no idea who the leader of the party is, and they're not even disturbed because Democrats are going to pick their own leader. It's not going to be picked by the press. It's not going to be picked by polling. It's going to be picked by Democratic voters, and that'll have to come in due time. But I don't think the party is in near as bad shape as being portrayed to be. Look, we lost the election. I don't like the party. I don't blame the party reputation for being low. But I think that if AOC wants to run for president, she gets the nominee, and God bless you. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Whoever gets that nomination is going to be it. And that's all I'm waiting on.
Well, here we backed into some intra-party news. You heard it here first. James Carville, once a critic of the AOC podcast landscape, now says, if you win, you win, and you got his support.
You win, you win.
All right, that's the Raging Cajun on MSNBC. Raven Harrison, what do you think about that? No leader of the Democrat Party, no message.
Of thoughts is garbage. His comment about the leader will be picked by the voters is absolute bull crap, because we just saw this last election of Kamala she received not one primary vote the first time she ran or this time. They forced Joe out. They installed her like a toilet. And so that should have ticked off 14 million people who said they wanted the dementia patient, and it didn't. So I don't like those word salad games. It is in disarray. They are all jockeying for position right now, and the only platform they've had is Trump hate. They've offered no solutions, nothing. They've all been in El Salvador fighting for a gang member. So that's where I feel like the party is right now. And if AOC becomes the nominee, I can guarantee you that there should be celebration in the streets, because the Democrats will never see the White House again if they put up this woman who is qualified for virtually nothing to go in to be their party's representative. They're thinking AOC is going to be the leader of the free world and negotiating with world leaders. It is desperation at its finest. But by all means, if they want to make sure that Republicans keep it, through the foreseeable future. But that's what I wanted to say to that, is that's what I would like to remind the Democrat voters, that the party took your voice away. They installed somebody and said, we don't care who you voted for. They are right now jockeying to see who they can get the most from. And they couldn't do it with Kamala, but there's going to be a heck of a fight for that.
I think these are very solid points that you're making. And I think it echoes a point that I'm seeing in other polls, right? For example, Newsweek yesterday puts out a poll and a headline that goes like this: Trump's approval rating soars amongst Hispanics. And similarly, we saw that with black voters. You happen to be black, I happen to be Hispanic. And I look at this and I think, there's a ton of support coming from, the quote-unquote minority community that are Democrats that are now voting for Republicans, that are Republicans. Oh, they've always been Republicans. When you see AOC kind of carrying the torch for Democrats, and you see black men breaking for Trump, Hispanic men, Hispanic women, I'm going to venture to say I think the next voting bloc that's going to start to trend towards Trump is going to be black women. What do you think?
Well, I'm actually Native American, so I'm sort of in
Black Indigenous person of color, right? It's a big banner.
I just didn't want to, again, we all have kind of trauma from Kamala and breaking out the hot sauce. I just wanted to make sure I was transparent with the voters. But no, you're good. And it's just what I tell people is this is what we're talking about. This is, AOC appeals to the youngers, and because of the whole social media craze, but this is real business. What Americans got creamed under is kitchen table issues. That's inflation, that's an open border, that was, fiscal irresponsibility and the government spending money. I hate that term, government funded. There's no such thing as government funded. It's all taxpayer funded. And it was reckless. Not one household in America could run the way the government is running this country right now. We are trillions in debt. We're paying interest, $1 trillion in interest a year just to keep up this debt. And who owns our debt? China. We are 40 ways from screwed if we don't start fixing this. And we have to have real people with real solutions. And AOC is not that person. She likes to get up there and spew hate and to say outrageous things. That gets the social media whipped up, but it does nothing for seniors struggling to pay their cost for insurance and meds and property taxes. It does nothing for these systems. And that's what you saw in November. People voted for, they don't give a darn about AOC's life. They care about their own. And they need our government to start working for them. And we can't do it if we're electing unserious people like Jasmine Crockett, who referring to people as Hot Wheels and they only care about the color of your skin. It's supposed to be merit. We are supposed to be a merit-based society on credentials and, people who are qualified to run. And it's just absolutely, her resume would not be impressive. Her resume wasn't impressive in the bar she worked in. She was in debt coming in, and now 7 years later, she's worth $30 million. This is what this is about. Same with Jasmine Crockett, same with the rest of them. They're all grandstanding because right now they want to be the leader. They want to be celebrated and revered. At the end of the day, this is the people's house. It's supposed to be, we're not even supposed to know this much about our Congress people. We're supposed to be there to represent the will of our constituents, period, stop. And a lot of people have lost their way on both sides of the aisle.
Speaking of the People's House, you're making a run for the People's House in Florida's 26th district, and I want to get to the bottom of that when we return. Folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming back with Raven Harrison, and yes, she identifies as a woman.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, we continue the conversation with you, all the American people. Open phones across America. The speed round is about to start. But I want to wrap up with Raven Harrison. She's running for Congress in Florida. Raven Harrison, let us know how people can donate to your campaign. Where do they go and how do they follow you?
Oh, I appreciate it, Rich. And it's actually Florida's 23rd district that I'm running in.
Excuse me. I'm getting it all wrong tonight. It's the deep state.
We're good. We got this. But everybody, the website is ravenharrisonforcongress.com. You can find me on social media and just telling the people you're going to get the government you deserve. But it starts, we got to send real people, serious people who are going to solve real problems to Congress. Term limits. We're going to attack these insurance crises. We're going to get that government a balanced budget, which is what we're supposed to be doing. And we're going to call out the traitors. So I just invite people to join us. Republican, Democrat, we can get it done. Stop fighting each other and let's attack the real problem.
Raven Harrison, how do they donate? What's the website?
The website is ravenharrisonforcongress.com. They can donate there, and it is greatly appreciated, patriots, because we gotta do the work. The swamp is deep and wide, but we can get this done. So they can find me on social media, and they can always find us. We'll be staying close to Rich.
Hey, sounds good to me. Folks, check her out at ravenharrisonforcongress.com. Raven Harrison, thank you so much for your time, for your excellent opinions, and we'll be doing it again real soon.
Thanks so much, Rich. Have a good one.
Godspeed. You too. And let's do some calls here because you guys have been patiently waiting, and I know you've got a lot to say. Let's go. Where do we go? Let's go to Robert, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. I just wanted to say that, in the old days, there used to be a saying. I grew up in the New York City area, and the saying was, every man has his price. The wealthy people in New York in those days used to say that. In other words, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the father of the Great October Revolution in Russia, he said something like, it's basically the same thing. If it's $100, $1,000, no big deal. 10,000, a million. When it gets up into the millions, then things start to happen. And if the person doesn't cooperate, they pull out the machine gun and blow them away. So the thing is, I was thinking with regard to Dan Bongino and what he said about the assassinate, the murder in the jail. Well, I'm not saying the murder in the jail. I'm saying the death in the jail there, the hanging or suicide or not.
Yeah. You're saying they paid the guard off to fall asleep? Or to not be there?
No. I'm thinking. Could Dan have been susceptible? I mean, after all, Dan is
I think Dan is uncorruptible. One of the things that I think people don't realize or might forget is that Bongino left a very good career with the Secret Service to pursue a very lucrative business that he started, a media business, with a hugely popular podcast. Then he got into radio, and that's when I met him. And he dominated in radio, eventually taking over Rush Limbaugh's old slot on many stations, at least half of them, and owns part of a publicly traded company that had an IPO where I'm going to say he became even wealthier than he was. So he has no reason to be corrupted by a bribe or anything like that. I mean, to even think of it is probably crazy. But moreover, I think if there was somebody that stands a chance to be bribed, it might be somebody who was supposed to be at work and didn't show up, or somebody who was supposed to be watching a camera and wasn't watching it, or the guy who was supposed to fix the camera and didn't fix it. Those types of things. I can buy any of those things. But ultimately, I think when you get a career servant in the public good, right, like Kash Patel, and you get somebody who, in my opinion, is uncorruptible, Dan Bongino, and you get these guys together and they review this evidence and they say, look, everything that you thought, and we thought too, until we saw all the evidence, it's just not there. Maybe more evidence will surface later, but what they've got doesn't point to it. And that's what they're saying. I believe what they're saying. I got no reason to not believe them. But Robert, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. And let me see. We continue. Let's keep it in that part of the world. Scott, Greenbrier, West Virginia, WSLW. Scott, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, I'm just calling because I felt like that history is being made by the non-actions and actions of the past. And in that regard, I'm saying that because there's no, I want to say, punishment for a lot of people's, improprieties or whatnot. But, my example was the Hillary Clinton, who had run, for office and she been senator and whatnot. She had a lot of charges against her that never really were, followed through with. And she was never
there actually were no charges against her, which I think is part of the problem that you're talking about, right? You're saying that there were, allegations of impropriety about her emails and having servers off-site and that type of thing. But yet James Comey famously said, we're not bringing any charges, which wasn't even his job. Is that what you're talking about?
Man, I love it. You're my man. I'm telling you what, forget all these people that are negative about you. You are top-notch good. And it's about telling the truth. And you're like Paul Harvey. You always have a point to make. And, man, he would hold back. You would sit there and wait for the very end to hear it. But with you, it's like, this is it. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you for that. Go ahead.
The cause and effect is what I'm saying is if they punish these crimes, then it wouldn't happen again, and other crimes wouldn't happen, and the history would have been different.
I think you're right.
We wouldn't have lost the election. But the election
I think
would
you're
have
right.
been the Republicans. And
part of the problem, Scott, if you'll permit me, is this is part of the problem. It's not that there's a lack of enforcement, even though it seems that way. It's that you've got people that are so good at breaking the law and oftentimes intertwined with the people enforcing and writing the law that they know exactly what to do and how far they can go to break the damn law. And in effect, that makes them almost above the law. So you need someone, a new, quote unquote, new sheriff in town like Trump, like Patel, like Bongino, like Bondi, for these people to come in and like a Congress that's playing ball, where you have to codify a lot of these things and say, you know what was once a thing, we're making a rule against this. We're making a law against that. We're not going to allow this anymore, because people get away with, I don't want to say murder, but people getting away with a lot. And all in the name of, well, I'm a public official. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But there was a very interesting statement made by the director of the Counterterrorism National Security Council, Sebastian Gorka, on this program a few days ago, and maybe last week. And he said that the deprivation of law under the color of law, right, the civil rights violation, that's a real thing, and one that they likely will have the burden of proof to prove. And I think this is a good start to see some enforcement, not treason, not seditious conspiracy, not the electric chair, and not public hangings by military tribunal, but federal charges nonetheless that I think will have a little bit of meat on the bone. And that's a whole lot better than the nothing we've seen in the past. So that's my thought. Scott, I appreciate it. Greenbrier, West Virginia, thank you for your kind words. You're a real patriot. WSLW. Folks are coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, very quickly, we're going to go to Ron Coleman, Alabama, listening to the show on richvaldez.com. Ron, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Good show tonight. I wanted to tell you that I had to sit here and watch from a few months before January 5th and 6th and seen the rehearsal where Pelosi's daughter was filming, and also the rehearsal for the help of the Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the D.C. police that were all in, and it's not pipe bombs, them were just pipes, there were no bomb to them, that they were all going to be called in, all this was going to be set at a certain time, and I sit here and right here and watched it, and if we're not going to really get into it and get these people and persecute them, it's going to happen again.
You know, I think you're right. And the Deputy Director Bongino made a statement about that today, and he made it in his interview with Fox News Channel, saying that they're definitely going to be getting into some January 6th stuff. I believe the word that they used was stunning. They discovered stunning Comey-era files in a room that was hidden from them at the FBI headquarters. So we'll get into a little bit of that on the next program. But I want to thank you for your call, Ron, and for everybody that called in, even the ones that want to fight me and disagree with me and have your panties in a twist. Thank you. Thank you. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.